Srimad Bhagavad Gita on earth. And we're continuing with our reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 9, text 48, the passing away of Bhishma Deva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Sushrit Satam. Text 48. Tato Yudhisthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajavayam Pitaram Sanivayam Asa Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim. Would anyone like to read?
Prabhu, we want to hear from you 2 more times, Prabhu.
Okay. Tato Yudhisthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajavayam Pitaram Santavayamasa Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim. Tato Yudhisthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajavayam Pitaram Santavayamasa Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim.
Tato Yudhisthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajahvayam Pitaram Shantvayam Asha Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim. Thank you, Prabhu.
Tato Yudhishthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajavayam Pitaram Santvayam Asa Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim.
Tato Yudhishthiro Gatva Saha Krishno Gajavayam Pitaram Santvayam Asha Gandharim Cha Tapasvinim.
Thank you, Mataji. Tata, therefore, Yudhishthira, Maharaj Yudhishthira, Gatwa, going there, Saha, with Krishna, the Lord, Gajavayam, in the capital named Gajavaya Hastinapura, Pitaram, unto his uncle Dhritarashtra, Santavayam Asa, consoled, Gandharim, the wife of Dhritarashtra, Cha, and Tapasvinim, an ascetic lady. Translation and purport given by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapura, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. Purport. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, the father and mother of Duryodhana and his brothers, were the elder uncle and aunt of Maharaj Yudhishthira. After the battle of Kurukshetra, the celebrated couple, having lost all their sons and grandsons, were under the care of Maharaj Yudhishthira. They were passing their days in great agony over such a heavy loss of life and were practically living the life of ascetics. The death news of Bhishma Deva, uncle of Dhritarashtra, was another great shock for the king and the queen, and therefore they required solace from Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira was conscious of his duty, and he at once hurried to the spot with Lord Krishna and satisfied the bereaved Dhritarashtra with kind words from both himself and the Lord also. Gandhari was a powerful ascetic. Although she was living the life of a faithful wife and a kind mother, it is said that Gandhari also voluntarily closed her eyes because of the blindness of her husband. A wife's duty is to follow the husband cent per cent, and Gandhari was so true to her husband that she followed him even in his personal blindness. Therefore, in her actions, she was also a great ascetic. Besides that, the shock she suffered because of the wholesale killing of her 100 sons and her grandsons was also was certainly too much for a woman. But she suffered all this just like an ascetic. Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishma Deva in character. They are both remarkable personalities in the Mahabharata. Tato yudhishthiro gatva saha krishno gajavayam pitaram santavayamasa gandharim cha tapasvinim. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital Hastinapura, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer obeisances to my spiritual teachers who are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, for I was born in the darkest ignorance. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Shri Chaitanya, when will Shri Rupa Goswami, who's established on earth the mission of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, grant me the shelter at his lotus feet? Vancha kalpa tarupyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are exactly like desired trees, capable of satisfying the desires of all living entities. And they are naturally very compassionate for the fallen and conditioned souls. My desire is that I may say something of value to all of you. And I'm going to try to switch to my laptop Zoom because my phone is not as adequate. And there we go. Magic. So we're at a special time of year to remember this battle of Kurukshetra and the great instruction that was given before it, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We remember that during the battle, we remember hearing that during the battle, the soldiers on both sides were living such a life of culture and adherence to dharmic principles that when the sun would set, the soldiers from opposite parties would speak with each other. Some would invite others to have food, and there was still decorum that was maintained. And we get a similar expression of such decorum here when Sri Yudhishthira is going to Dhritarashtra and Sri Gandhari to console them after the loss of their children. We know the story very well. Dhritarashtra was the uncle, but also was the in a sense, he was the steward of the throne. He was holding the throne until the Pandavas were old enough to take it over, because Pandu was the rightful king. During the course of time, Dhritarashtra became attracted to the throne and ended up having kids of his own, and decided that maybe it would be a better idea for me to hold on to it and to give it to my kids instead. What their lives are showing us is what's normal in the material world. What's normal in the material world is to develop attraction for things. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that by contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attraction for them. So it's not that Krishna says if one wants to develop attraction. Krishna just says all you need to do is contemplate it. It's automatic. The nature of the material world is like that. It's just a system. It's like when you're writing code, it's a whole bunch of logical processes, or if this, then that. If someone clicks this button, it has to go there. So like, for example, if you click someone's profile picture on Facebook, it has to open. It's not that you have to really, really want that picture to open, or if you don't want it to open so much, it won't open. If you click, then it will open. So Krishna gives a similar sequence in the material world, that if you contemplate something, you will develop attachment for it. So that's normal. It's the most natural thing in the world. No one needs to practice developing attachments in the material world. We're all very well trained in that. We're all, you could say, swamis of developing attachment, and swaminis. So Dhritarashtra contemplated the throne and the power that comes with being the emperor of the entire world, which is, I can't imagine, you know. I mean, it gets to my head when, you know, I play mridanga nicely in front of 12 devotees. Admittedly, 12 devotees are, you know, better company than the entire world, but still. So, but Yudhishthira is showing us what's unnatural, which is living according to spiritual and dharmic principles in the material world. What's unnatural is to follow the rules of etiquette despite the offensive behavior of another individual. That's not natural. It's not easy to be fighting with somebody on a battlefield with weapons, with lethal weapons and with deadly force, and to be engaged in the act of trying to kill the other person. But then once the sun sets, okay, this is a soul. At the end of the day, this isn't, you know, really an eternal enmity that I have. This is a temporary situation in which I'm trying to reestablish the rules of Dharma as I see. And, you know, here's this other person, and so they deserve to be, this is still a child of God. So let's have tea. That's very unnatural. Because think about what it requires. It requires looking at an object or actually, this is what we could say, is we could say that the devotees are not contemplating on the objects of the senses. They're contemplating Krishna's instruction. It's not that Yudhishthira Maharaj is looking at these individuals as though they're enemies. He's looking at these individuals as though it's his duty to put an end to irreligious activities on earth. So he's not contemplating that this is an object of my sense for me to become a great conqueror, for me to become a great king. He's saying, I'm a servant and this is my duty. Well, we can only imagine what the pure devotees are thinking, but we can reverse engineer the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita and imagine that Yudhishthira isn't doing this for fame. And so that's why it's possible for him to still treat somebody else with equality. And he does the same thing when the battle is over. The two people that were his parents in the absence of his father, well, Dhritarashtra, who was really his father in the absence of his father, turned his back on him. And he was a young kid. And he began to turn a second blind eye to the treatment of the Pandavas even when they were kids. And this continued all throughout their lives, when he had the option several times to defend his cousins or his nephews, and to put an end to the cultivation of desires of his own children. He could have very easily said, oh no, it's just not within the cards. He could have done a similar thing that Dhruva's mother said. It's like, oh, it's out of my control. If you want to be king, you should go pray to Krishna. And then you would have made them a devotee too. All 100 Kauravas would have been devotees. But he didn't check the contemplation of Duryodhana and his brothers' desires to become king. It would be nice to be like this. So he hurried. Srila Prabhupada says he at once hurried to the spot with Lord Krishna and satisfied the bereaved Dhritarashtra with kind words. It's worth noticing that Lord Krishna is here too. I was just reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam yesterday, after Sri Brahma receives instructions from Krishna on how to create, he's glorifying him. And Sri Brahma says that, my Lord, you are not so satisfied with the service of the demigods, who Prabhupada says are sakama devotees, or devotees with desires. But you still satisfy them, you still give them what they need, because you are the super soul in all living entities. And he says that you are the well-wisher of all. In the purport, Prabhupada is saying that he's explaining that Sri Brahma describes Lord Krishna's position as super soul because no one knows our hearts more. No one knows our hearts more than super soul. And here, super soul is showing one of those characteristics of being the well-wisher of all living entities. Super soul isn't abandoning Dhritarashtra or abandoning Gandhari in this difficult moment, nor did he abandon them before, nor is Yudhishthira staying to gloat or to celebrate that he's now the emperor of the world. But in fact, they're rushing to the people that need the help the most. So this is a good quality of how they say that the devotees don't like to misuse time. Say even an instant of time misused is a great loss to a devotee. And look at Yudhishthira Maharaj, who after Bhishma Dev's funeral rites are performed, immediately he goes to care for someone else. There's no like, oh, I need to lament a little bit after this battle. It's like there's no time to lament in devotional service, it seems. And Lord Krishna is the well-wishing and the well-wishing friend of all, is accompanying his devotee to care for Dhritarashtra. And we know what will happen is another devotee, Vidura, is going to instruct Dhritarashtra later. So everyone has a chance. In the next paragraph, Srila Prabhupada describes that Gandhari was a powerful ascetic, although she was living the life of a faithful wife and a kind mother. So this reminds me of the verse in Sri Upanishad that says, only an individual that can walk simultaneously, and I'm paraphrasing, walk simultaneously the path of knowledge and the path of nescience can transcend the influence of the miseries of the material world. So here we have an example of someone that's performing, swadharma, that they're performing the duties of matrimony, of following the partner, but also doing something a little more, which is, well, if my husband is blind, then I will accept, I will voluntarily surrender my vision. So I suppose that partnerships are like this, that at least in friendships, we revel at the victories of our friends, and we don't keep moving forward when our friends are in difficulty. So our friend has a good time, we want to bring them to the ultimate point of celebration of that thing. Like, you did amazing. You follow the Guru's instructions. You're doing something great for Srila Prabhupada. You're being an inspiration to everyone else, because it's so easy to not do things. And so you really want to, hype up your friend to the ultimate point of victory, or to move forward with your friend. Yesterday, my friend made a post that said the Krishna consciousness movement is about moving forward. It's always about moving forward and always wanting to, we could use the word advance, but we could also use the word love Krishna more. Advance is kind of a technical term for moving through categories, but loving Krishna more is actually what we're trying to do. And love is devotee. So we should always be moving. We should always be trying to move towards a point of, how can I be a better friend to the devotees? How can I be a better servant to them? How can I listen better? And ultimately, what will it take for me to develop love for Krishna? How can I love him? And one of those ways we know is that, performing our duties in the material world is an offering to Krishna. Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yaj tuhosi dadashi yat, yat tapas yasi kaunteya, tad kurushva madarpanam. So everything that you do, everything that you give away, everything that you eat, yat tapas yasi, and every austerity that you perform, you should perform as an offering to me. And so Gandhari is doing this. She was so true to her husband that she followed him even in his perpetual blindness. Therefore, in her actions, she was a great ascetic. And here it says, Prabhupada says, Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishma Dev in character. Bhishma Dev made a similar vow. Both of them made a terrible vow in a sense, to give up your vision. And I'm not trying to speculate, but I heard that mental speculation is asking, like, oh, well, why was that? Kind of like doubtful, but using your mind in a proper way is trying to understand the scriptures with the eye of the scripture. So I'll try to do that with your permission and your blessings. But how it's possible to develop attachment for the world, it's really developed by contemplating the objects of the senses. And the easiest way to do that is through your vision. So maybe it was Gandhari's saving grace that she surrendered her material vision, while her husband had kind of surrendered his spiritual vision. Srila Prabhupada says that though he was blind from birth, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. So both of them, Prabhupada is saying that both of them in character or in their ability to take on a very difficult vow is equivalent. So these are the two main points that Srila Prabhupada brings up in his purport. What sticks out to me the most is that in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning this ability that the devotees have. Externally, it looks like they're detached, but what they're really attached to is service to Krishna. You could look at it from, if you're attracted to renunciation, you could look at Yudhishthira as, how is he just not celebrating yet? Or how is he not a little happy that the people that have caused him so much difficulty are gone? Or how is he not trying to gloat even a little bit to the Father that encouraged these people, or thanking Krishna? Krishna's right next to his side, and he knows that he's the supreme person, and that not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the divine. He's not even thanking Krishna for, thanks for at least ending our suffering. If he's not a materialist wanting the empire, at least he's Anandamaya Vyasa. He's just desiring of not suffering. But even that, he's just always looking to how to help somebody else and how to be of service. This is what's so powerful about Krishna, it seems, that just by developing a little bit of attraction to Krishna, Yudhishthira's attraction is incalculable, but that attraction, it naturally, the qualities of the soul manifest. Krishna is compassionate, and Krishna has a quality or looks at everyone with equanimity. And he's always wishing well for other people. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when Sri Rupa Goswami begins his first verse, Akila Rasamrita Murti, Srila Rupa Goswami is describing three tiers of gopis. And he's doing that, Sri Jiva Goswami says in his commentary, because he wants to convey the exalted nature of Krishna by revealing the super excellent service of his devotees. So he's really intelligent because he's perceiving that understanding Krishna is so beyond us, because he's beyond the material world, and all I know is the material world. All I've seen are things that are comparable to the material world, or things that are better relative to the material world. So how can I ever understand a being who exists independently of the material world, who is not comparable to it in one sense? I don't know the value of one universe. And then they say that multiverses are exuding from his pores, from his breathing. I don't know the value of an instant. And Brahma's lifetime exists within a single exhalation of Mahavishnu. So how can I understand these things? But what I can understand to some degree is how wonderful the devotees are, because the devotees are appearing within my vision to show me a little bit of what devotional service is like. So Rupa Goswami is saying that, he's citing Taraka and Palika and Shyama and Lalita and Sri Radha, because he knows that in all the Vedic literatures, the Gopi Janas are adored or exalted. Among all other lovers of God, they are seen as their love is the absolute limit of what love of God is like. And so he's showing how Krishna, controls, sees as equal, and is controlled by those devotees respectively. And so the Bhagavatam is doing this to us also. The whole Bhagavatam is, in a sense, just explaining what Rupa Goswami is trying to show us in the first verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the devotees are such exalted personalities. There was Urmila Devi Dasi was meeting Srila Prabhupada with her father, and her father was not too interested in the Krishna consciousness movement, but Prabhupada was trying to warm him up to it. And so Prabhupada, was asking him, like, oh, so you think this is nice? And the father was like, I don't think, it's whatever. It's not so interesting to me, but I suppose that I'm just happy that my daughter is happy. And Prabhupada said, so you see the value of what she's doing? And again, the father kind of doubled down and said, no, I'm simply I'm not looking at those other things that she's doing. I'm actually just grateful that she's not, doing whatever other, hippie people would be doing at this time. And Prabhupada said, well, you love her and she loves Krishna. Therefore, you love Krishna. So that's I forget in mathematics what that's called, but it's the law of equivalence, I believe, that if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is also equal to C. So when Urmila Devi is telling that story, she says, well, I didn't think that I had any love for Krishna, but I understood that I want to follow Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's following Krishna. So she had a glimpse of what it's like to follow Krishna. So we should revel in this, that it's that the Bhagavatam is giving us an opportunity to appreciate people that love Krishna. And for myself, I may not know who he is, or I may not have developed attachment even to his name. But I've seen the devotees, and I've seen that they act unlike anyone else in the world, and I've seen that the devotees not even the Bhagavatas that are mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but the Bhagavatas that are on earth right now. I've seen that nobody is as compassionate for anyone else as them. They have qualities that don't exist in anyone else. And they have the ability to remove the suffering of living entities by just an instant of their company. And they mercifully give out instructions all the time so that anyone around them can hold on to the instruction and make it their life's goal. And we've all seen who the Bhagavata is, and some of us have been very fortunately accepted as the servants of that Bhagavata. And all of us are engaged in the service of the people who are serving Srila Prabhupada. So we all know what Prabhupada's qualities are like. And so we have a very wonderful opportunity right now to see something transcendental, which is the qualities of Krishna as expressed through the qualities of the devotees, which is non-different. So we're extraordinarily lucky. Because this isn't acting on the platform of our intellect. It's not that intellectually we're going to realize in a moment, I must be like Yudhishthir, and this person who is being offensive to me, I will be like Yudhishthir, and I will be very kind to them despite their being mean to me. Jnana karma dhyanavritam. It's not necessarily acting on the platform of knowledge and karma. This is acting on this transcendental vibration is acting on the platform of the heart. And so what will happen is it'll probably resemble surrender. And it'll probably resemble a form of just kind of giving up and saying like, I wish I could be like Yudhishthir in this moment. Not I will be like, but I wish I could have just a drop of Yudhishthir's compassion for other people. I wish I could have Gandhari's resolve to keep my vows. But the more that we read from them, we might just, we might realize, I'm realizing, I don't know if I'll stop realizing it, but I realize like what little capacity I have to keep my vows and what little capacity I have to do all the things that I want to do in Srila Prabhupada's service. But maybe the best thing that I can do is just read every once in a while, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, and hope that one day, Krishna will undo that knot in my heart. That is, I heard a class in when I was in Brazil, Setukara Prabhu was giving a class, and he was saying, liberation is so funny because no one is holding on to the material world for you but you. Yet we're praying to Krishna to liberate us. So he gave the example. It's like you're holding on to a tree. You're just, Krishna, help me let go of this tree. Krishna. You're just, nobody's holding on to the tree but us. But we're begging Krishna to help us let go. But if you think about it, what we're really begging for is, I heard once Yamunacharya Das Goswami, he said that the reason why we don't surrender to Krishna fully, and he's probably quoting someone else, he said the reason why we're not surrendering to Krishna fully is because we're not convinced yet that all the happiness that we could ever hope for is available in Krishna's service. We're still not convinced that spiritual life can be as rewarding as material life, because material life is characterized by I am looking out for me. And who can look out for me better than me? So we're not convinced yet that Krishna knows us better than we know ourselves, even after hearing the story of the cowherd boys and the cows being stolen by Brahma, and Krishna expanding himself perfectly into every one of his cowherd boys, because he knows them perfectly. Even after seeing that Krishna really does know us perfectly, we're still not convinced. I don't know if all my needs will be taken care of. So what we're begging for when we're asking Krishna, let me let go of this tree, is that we're, in a sense, asking Krishna to prove his love for us more than what he's already done, which is, speaking for myself, a sign of my foolishness, that I'm not as intelligent as I may think, because, and because it shows my superficiality, that I'm such a materialist in how I need to have everything shown to me. It's not enough that things be intellectually very clear for me. The philosophy that Srila Prabhupada presented, that Sri Krishna Chaitanya presented, is flawless. I don't know I don't know everything about philosophy, but I know that everything that I know about philosophy, Srila Prabhupada has defeated. So I know that. I know that I haven't been able to defeat this philosophy. But even that's not enough for me. Apparently, I'm not an intellectual creature. I'm a little more of like a sensory creature. And so I still am wanting Krishna to show me how much he has my interests in mind. And he does. And one of the ways is, I think, through the Bhagavatam, because when we read the Bhagavatam, especially actually exclusively in company with the devotees, like none of this happens when I'm reading on my own. None of these realizations or verses come when I'm reading on my own. When I'm given the privilege of reading with you all, something interesting happens, which is Krishna begins to reveal himself for real through the Bhagavatam, and the devotees, and the super excellent nature of the devotees begins to be revealed. So thank you for praying for me to say something, because I feel like I got a glimpse of how special the Bhagavatam is, because it's revealing the devotees to us, and the devotees who know Krishna. So it's establishing again the importance of the parampara, and how the devotee is the transparent via medium of Krishna's mercy, but also of Krishna's revelation. If we were qualified enough to serve Krishna directly, we would have received knowledge directly from Krishna, like Brahma. But I'm not qualified to receive knowledge directly from Krishna. So it stands to reason that I should serve him through the person that revealed knowledge to me. And so that's Srila Prabhupada. But I'm not even qualified enough to receive knowledge from Prabhupada directly, which in a sense is a greater mercy, because it gives us more devotees to serve. The person at the end of the parampara has the mercy of getting to receive knowledge through everyone, but also render service through everyone. Yeah, it's like maybe that's why the demigods are so desirous of being in this movement right now, because look at how many people we get to serve. We get to serve all our Guru Janas. We get to serve Srila Prabhupada, his desire of having books distributed, and Bhakti Siddhanta's desire of having Krishna consciousness preached in the English language, and Gorakishore Das Babaji Maharaj's desire of having everyone develop love for Gora, and Bhakti Vinod Thakur's desire of having this philosophy be presented honestly, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted, without any deviations. And Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj's desire of having people recognize where Mahaprabhu appeared, and having people dance at that place. And everyone. And it's just, we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have so many devotees to surrender to. Hare Krishna. If anyone would like to add their realizations, please do so.
Hare Krishna, Dāna Raja Prabhuji, Dhanyavad Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Thank you so much for your wonderful realizations and sharings from Srimad Bhagavatam. I truly relish the nectar, Prabhu. Thank you so much. I have a comment and also a question, Prabhu, if you could kindly permit me to say. Prabhu, I just like the point how it is, while contemplating the sense objects, how we develop senses on the sense objects, how we develop attachment. We don't need to put any extra extraneous effort for that. That was very nice to hear, Prabhu. It was a great realization, actually. Just like this, just by thinking our sense objects, then we can truly develop attachment, right? So that is really bothering so much. So Prabhu, we have to come out of that. Thank you so much for making me realize that how it's easy to get attached to the sense objects, Prabhuji. And especially you also mentioned that vision is very important, right? So vision is very, just by seeing the objects we can get attracted to the objects, and that is the reason why Gandhari blinded herself following her husband, right? That's a very good point. I like it, Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing. And I like another point also, Prabhu, like how you mentioned about Yudhishthira's thinking, Prabhu. He does not have any intention to conquer and the in the war and enjoy, I mean, killing the other people on the side, but he just did it as per his duty, as per following the rules of dharma. And he knows that the situation is temporary, because you have explained very beautifully that by the end of the day the war ended and they are friends, having chai, tea, sitting together, talking together, and it's really it's very temporary. And I don't know how to contemplate also on that, because it's very hard, Prabhu, actually throughout the day fighting with each other, to keep in the mind that win over the other party, and by the end of the day they just stop everything and cool, relax, and so it's such a temporary situation. So Yudhishthira, being a very pious king, he knows what is his duty. Without any attachment, he was doing his duty. So that also really inspired me a lot, Prabhu. And throughout the lecture, you have given how we have to follow the disciplic succession, Srila Prabhupada, how you have mentioned another point, I like it, Prabhu. We are not qualified to get the direct knowledge from, how Brahma got from Krishna directly, but we have the disciplic succession through how we can get the knowledge from the previous acharyas, especially from Srila Prabhupada, by reading his books and, associating with devotees and serving the devotees of Krishna, how we can get the knowledge. That also very good, Prabhu. Thank you so much for that. And I have a question, Prabhu, actually. See, Gandhari is such a chaste wife of Dhritarashtra, and she is a very, very nice woman, chaste woman, and followed her husband in each and every respect. And because his husband is blind, she was also blinding her, she became blinded. And I don't see any fault with her throughout the the Mahabharata and everything. When we see, she was not interfering in any situation, Prabhu, basically. And when we take Kunti Maharani, she's a devotee of the Lord, and she was very, very well appreciated, actually, for Kunti prayers, and very famous, right? She was very well appreciated, basically. So, and Gandhari was not given that much of importance throughout, Mahabharata, wherever we see. So is it because she is not a devotee of Krishna, or Kunti Maharani is such an exalted devotee of Krishna, Prabhu? How do we understand the situation, Prabhu? And another sub question is in that, did Gandhari ever, ask her husband not to do this all, or, stop doing this, injustice to Pandavas or something like that, Prabhu? So would you please enlighten in this regard, Prabhu? Thank you so much.
First, thank you for your comments. It's I hearing you say them again reminded me of how important they are. Sometimes when we say it, we're just like, receiving an inspiration from Krishna, but when you say it again, it is automatic. I was thinking regarding the first point that you mentioned of how it's automatic to look at the senses. A person could say, okay, well then I'll stop looking at things and I'll just stay inside my house. But that won't work anymore, because we already have seen the world. So the attachment is already there. So, and also we know that Bhaktisiddhanta didn't approve of that, of just staying in a solitary place and chanting Hare Krishna. So how difficult is our duty now, that we have to keep going out there in the world and learn how to look at it, not just avoid looking at it, but look at it in the right way. It's actually harder, but it's possible. Anyway, that was something that came up. But regarding your questions, Narottam Vilas Prabhu and Jai Sachinandan are here if they'd like to address it. Please.
Before I hear the answer, I want to share, and another one, it's as you said, Prabhu, we are holding it actually. because you said given an example, like how we are, embracing a tree, like material attachments, right? We are holding it, not Krishna. So we have to come out of that, and we are holding it, and we are praying to Krishna, please, Krishna, make me detached from all these things, make me detached from all these things. And we are holding, unless and until we leave that tree, then Krishna also couldn't help it, right? Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Prabhus, would anyone like to answer Mataji's question?
Narottam Vilas Prabhu, do you want to take first stab at it? Because
No, Prabhu, please, we'd like to hear from you too.
because I just got called from the temple for some
Okay.
Punjabi issue. So what was the question? I didn't hear, but maybe Narottam Vilas Prabhu can start, and then I'll know what the context is. Forgive me. I was listening to your lecture when I got called from the temple.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Prabhu, thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you, Mataji, for the wonderful reflections and realizations you mentioned. If I understand the question correctly, Mataji, you are asking why isn't Gandhari so as glorified as Mother Kunti? And
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Stop Dhritarashtra from stop doing any evil things, so to say, to the Pandavas. Is that correct, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you. Yes.
I don't know whether I can try my best. Please forgive me if I'm making mistakes, but I can try my best. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The Bhagavatam is not about just Bhagavan. It's about the Bhagavatas also. This entire Srimad Bhagavatam is basically glorifying the devotees. It's so to say, Krishna is glorified because the devotees are glorified. Bhagavatam, the devotees are the main point of attraction, so to say, in Srimad Bhagavatam. And thereby Krishna is glorified. So here all the wonderful personalities. Gandhari is, of course, one of the most chaste, the Mandodari, Gandhari, the very wonderful personalities in a Vedic scriptures, history. But here Gandhari, the point of in Mahabharata, definitely she's more glorified in Mahabharata. Right? But in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatas are the main essence, the center point. So here Mother Kunti, her devotion to Krishna is glorified. How one should be attached to Krishna. That's the whole point of Srimad Bhagavatam. How can we be more attached to Krishna? Now Gandhari was definitely a chaste lady. She exemplifies the dharmic, patni dharma, dharmic duties of a wife. She exemplifies to the point, to the apex, so to say. She exemplifies that to best. But that is still dharmic principles. But what devotion to Krishna is beyond these dharmic principles, right? So how can we, show devotion to Krishna? What should be the characteristic? What should be our word? How should be our words? How should be our feelings? Everything that is shown by Mother Kunti, right? And that is the whole point of Bhagavatam, right? To increase our love, attraction towards Krishna. That is why Mother Kunti is given more prominence, so to say, in this context. That's what I understand, Mataji. This is no indication of showing less, lessening the austerities, but Gandhari showed. But there is a different context, different dharmic way, you could say, that she exemplifies that. But point of Srimad Bhagavatam is true. The only point is how to get attracted to Krishna. How can we get attracted to Krishna? What should be our mood? And because we don't know how to do it, you have to see the devotees, the Bhagavatas, how do they do it? That is basic. Because we don't know. We see examples. Yajad acharati sheshta tat eva tarojana. Sayat pramana kurute lokasat anuvartate. What great personality performs, we follow. Mother Kunti. So that is the point of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is why she is more glorified, exemplified. That's part of my understanding, Mataji. And I'm really not sure if Gandhari, because they were so blinded by their love for the children. Dhritarashtra also knew very well what they're doing, but he was so blinded by love for the children. They go, no, it's okay. Even after understand, the first verse of Bhagavad Gita, the Mamaka Pandavas, he knew how powerful the Pandavas were. He knew everything. Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. He told everything. Still he's asking, are you sure they did not come to truce, right? He knows Arjuna defeated the entire Kaurava army single-handedly during Virat. when I was in the eunuch. He knew how powerful he defeated the Gandharvas, which Duryodhana could not defeat. He knew if one single Arjuna can do this, what about the Pandavas and their army? He knew everything. He knew how dangerous, so to say. He knew how dharmakshita, how pious the whole land of Kurukshetra is. I know how the influence of a place can have on the conscience of a person. He knew everything. Still asking, and they did not come to truth. Or else, why would there's no point, if you have a plate in front of you and you say, okay, are you going to eating? Are you eating? Well, yes, the plate is in front of me. The plate is in front of me. It doesn't make any sense to ask question after they come into the battlefield and looking at each other. What did they do? Of course, they will fight, right? So he's to make sure that there's no truce. Even at that point of time, even though he knew what was going to happen, he knew very well he was in a very bad position because of all these things which you mentioned. Still, he's so blinded by love for his children. Similarly, Gandhari, the mother's love is more intense than a father's love. She couldn't, that's why she got angry at the end of Mahabharata as well. Why did you have to kill all my sons? She's still attached to her sons, right? So that's my understanding. They wanted everything for their children. So that's my understanding. But there may be more details to it, nuances to it. Chandra Prabhu, Dāna Prabhu, or any other devotees would like to share. But this is my understanding, Mataji. Thank you so much. Please forgive me.
No, Prabhu, it was wonderful answer. Thank you so much. I completely understand totally. So we can understand that first question answer, I understand very nice, Prabhu. And thank you so much. Gandhari is on the dharmic level. She's just following her husband's footsteps. And love to devotion to Krishna and love to Krishna is something superior than that. So it was very wonderful. Thank you, so Prabhuji, for making me understanding that point. And second point, Gandhari, so much attached to her sons. I understand that. So she was supporting her husband, Prabhuji. We can understand that even though she understands that her husband is not doing the right thing, but still out of her attachment to her sons, she was supporting him, Prabhu. We can understand in that way.
That's my understanding is, Mataji. Unless I would love to be corrected if that's wrong. But that's my understanding is, Mataji, that they wanted best for the children because of their love, blinded by their love. So even though, all this while, it's not that she did not have any say. Right? She's a very powerful personality. Right? Prabhupada himself compared that she's on the level of Bhishma Dev. She's on the level as Bhishma Dev, right? So she showed some small personality. She's very strong character in Mahabharata, right? So it's not that if she's something, someone can just now rub her off, just go away.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Prabhu, and one more thing I want to add, she wants to protect Duryodhana also, right? From Krishna's this thing. Yes. So she wanted her son to come in front of him naked. So that she could protect her. At the same time, as you said, Prabhu, in our this today's purport, Dāna Prabhu was reading, she is compared with Bhishma Dev actually. So it's a little bit of contradiction. So I'm just trying to understand that, because she's so much attached and she was supporting her husband at the same time. She's a very chaste woman and a very, very pious lady. She sacrificed all her life basically, right, by blinding her eyes, and she's compared to basically Bhishma Dev also in this purport, today's purport. Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Maybe just we can throw much more important things that I'm sure. So thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Mataji, can you say the two questions? The two essential questions you asked?
Prabhu, my first question was actually why Gandhari, even though she's such a chaste woman, she was not appreciated as much as Kunti Devi. She was not appreciated as much as Kunti Devi. And the second question is did she actually support her husband? Or did he ever warn her husband that he's not doing the right thing to do? That Dhritarashtra was doing injustice to Pandavas, Prabhu. So did she ever warn her husband? That's what my second question.
And you mean, why was she not glorified as much specifically in the Bhagavatam?
Yes, Prabhu, like Kunti Maharani.
Yes. So I think, Mr. Vilas Prabhu gave, an expanded reply. My essential understanding is that Bhagavatam is spoken in regards to the sense of urgency of the question that Kurukshetra Maharaj asked Shukadev Goswami, specifically, what is the prime occupational duty for everyone, and specifically, what is one supposed to do when they're on the verge of death? So there's a sense of Bhagavatam is not like a compendium of details like for example, the Vedas. And so there's not necessarily, like even if you look at like Sri Ramchandraji's pastime in Bhagavatam, it's very briefly described. Or like some of the Leela avatars, like Dattatreya, for example, there's hardly any description, even though he's a partial expansion of the Lord. So that does not mean that that personality is not glorious. It just means that that sense of urgency that Parikshit Maharaj had in his question about what should I be doing at the last stage of my life is the primal focus of everything that Shukadev Goswami is referencing. And the predominating deity that's worshipped in Bhagavatam is, of course, Sri Krishna in Canto 10 and 11. And all the other cantos are leading up to that point of surrendering to Krishna Bhagavan. So my sense is that it's not that one devotee is lesser than other devotee in that sense. And then I think the other takeaway that, but it's like in reply to that urgency of Parikshit Maharaj that the entire Bhagavatam is being spoken. And the characters revolve around their relationships specifically with Bhagavan and with their relationships with each other. Bhagavatam is a book on relationships between devotees and between devotees and Bhagavan. And my second understanding is the power of association. She herself is, like Srila Prabhupada says, she is definitely, symbolic representation of tapasya, no less than Bhishma Dev, who also, like you all said, took a great vow that I will do this and followed it, and she did as well. But the power of association is so strong that that person for whom she took her vow to, follow, come whatever may happen, I think also affected her vision, even though she was materially wrapped something around her eye so she could not see, just like her husband was materially blinded. That also had a lot of focus in her life. Her attachment was to Dhritarashtra. Kunti Devi also at one level had attraction to her sons, but as you know very nicely, that that Kunti Devi speaks extensively in chapter 8 that let my attraction go towards Lord Krishna, like the flow of the Ganga. Gandhari Mataji never really said that, as far as I know. So I think the way to understand it is that the overarching principle in Bhagavatam is what should one do when one is on the verge of death, and what's the occupational duty for everybody. And that occupational duty we know is Savaipum Samparamo, right? So, and she's not really exemplifying that. So the Bhagavatam kind of goes over very briefly. Mahabharata does describe her, as you know, nicely, more extensively. So those are the simple things I know about it. About this.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Wonderful adding. Thank you so much. Yeah, it completely satisfies. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Dhanraj Prabhu, would you like to add? You've obviously meditated on the qualities of Kunti Devi nicely, since there's a nice question.
Well, I appreciated your answers a lot. I appreciated your answers a lot. From Narottam Vilasa Prabhu's answer, I saw how all the Vedas really are wish fulfilling, but that the Bhagavatam is not interested in fulfilling material wishes anymore. This is the part of the literature that's trying to fulfill spiritual wishes. So it'll only focus on that. So it's not that, like Mataji was perhaps trying to clarify, it's not that Gandhari is being insulted at all. It's just that's not the focus. So I appreciate how Narottam Vilas Prabhu mentioned that. And what I appreciated from your answer was the urgency of the Bhagavatam. And I saw how wonderful is it that even in such an urgent situation, look at how much is described about Krishna. That's just what I was thinking. Like, even the way they have to talk so quick, everything else was rushed in a sense, but what was not rushed was the 10th canto. There was so much time to talk about that. So it's, in another way, Shukadeva Goswami is indicating the super excellence of Sri Krishna Chandra that way. So I appreciated that in your answer. And that was a very good question, Mataji. It helps clarify to us that are maybe sometimes interested in austerities for the sake of austerity, but it's showing that association is much more important than even like the great vows, you know. So I appreciate that question. Thank you.
I would like to thank you, each and every one of you, because Prabhu, you brought this topic, and because of your explanations, all this discussion arose actually. And also, as you said, very, very nice points are mentioned by Narottam Vilas Prabhu and Jai Sachin Prabhu. It was very nice actually to hear from both of them. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Is anybody else comments, questions? Okay, so today at